as we go through, because we have 3 public hearings this evening, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wilson. The floor is yours.
Okay, so Mr. Wyatt Wurgis from ETI is going to talk to us about the proposed HVAC improvements at Roosevelt Elementary that will be paid, proposed to be paid with ESSER dollars. So take it away.
Hi, so Wyatt Wurgis with Engineering Technologies, mechanical engineer. So the Roosevelt project is basically kind of a outcropping of what we did a few years ago or a year and a half ago to look at the infrastructure, existing HVAC, lighting, electrical, all those things. So Roosevelt was one of the high priority targets on that list. So there's roughly 20 heat pumps that are old R22, which is really costly to replace. So we're doing them all at one, recommendations to do them all at one time. There's energy recovery units that are also out of date, have a handful of just existing issues that need to be addressed. So replacing those with some low dew point, humidity control type of components with them, as well as some energy recovery. And so that's a brief summary. There's also some existing water heaters that are old that there's like 4 separate ones. We're gonna bring into just 2 and just optimize the system for there, just buy what you need versus replacing all 4. And then we also have an add alternate to increase filtration in all the heat pumps, both in the old ones that we are replacing and also just all the existing ones that were also provided in the 2011 edition. The ones we're replacing date back to the early 2000s. And then also add some ionizers too, just to improve air quality. They make the particles bigger and allow the filters to capture the particles more effectively. So we've got a kind of a rough schedule right now as we work through the designs. The design will be completed late January and out to bid. We'll have a walkthrough mid-February with bid dates in March, hopefully board approval early in March so we can move quickly. That'll be something that we want to really be on top of because lead times are really being extended out right now. So we want to make sure that that happens as quick as possible so we can hit our August deadline for anticipated completion. So we've seen a lot of inflation on mechanical equipment and costs in general right now. And so that's what we currently are holding as our expected budget. These are up to date and they anticipate upcoming price increases that we're seeing from our equipment manufacturers. So we think this is a pretty good number for what we would expect to see at bid time. We're holding a larger contingency right now just simply because of the volatility. So just something to anticipate as we kind of work through this current pricing climate. And that's it. So any questions?
I have a few questions. So we're going to be using ESSER dollars, so Davis-Bacon wages apply. What is the plan to ensure that our contractors are in subs of subs are paying out the proper rates?
So we write that all into our specifications, that is a required thing, and they have to submit that as part of their proposal.
Okay, and so we'll be asking for a list of subs, just not subs?
Yeah, so they go through and they have all that. So that'll be something that I'll make sure that we review at the time of bid.
Okay.
We had good success with that on Edison, so I don't anticipate that being a problem, but it'll be something we watch.
Any other questions from the board? Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Mr. Wilson, we'll now move forward with our second public hearing, and you'll introduce Jared.
Mr. Jared Olson, who you've seen here before from HGM, will be talking about the outdoor classroom project at Abraham Lincoln High School. Jared?
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Jared Olson. Nice to meet a few of you for the first time. I'm here talking about the Abraham Lincoln Outdoor Classroom. There's several things happening at AL High School. This is one of the portions we're talking about today. You'll be hearing after me about the indoor auditorium enhancements. What we're going to be doing is fixing up the unused courtyard that's currently at the top of the hill. Some people may not even know it's there, and turning it into an outdoor classroom. We'll be basically adding in some paving and a few planting areas and some fencing, etc. I have a few additional slides here. This is a view of the current area there. There's currently no doors into the courtyard area. The only way to access it is actually from the outside, which is not accessible to the students or staff right now with the current configuration. We are planning on getting some movable furniture and some shade structures. We refer to them as sails, but generally speaking, just to provide a little bit of covering out there from the sunshine. And we will be utilizing a new door that is being installed in the building along with a structural stoop that is being change ordered into an existing door package that we already had with a door contractor, so that worked out pretty well. Our project will actually be tying into that. And this is generally what the bird's eye view of this will be. You can see where the shade structures will be, layout of the furniture. We'll have some plantings on the south side there, and we'll put some decorative concrete in there just to give it a little bit of dimension with a little bit of a curved edge. And then out along the parking lot will be an ornamental fencing, and there will be a emergency egress crash bar on that, so that if there were an emergency event while students were out there, they could have an exit path. A little bit of miscellaneous lighting, a few other things. But generally speaking, that's the extent of the project. Our hope is to get bids back on January 4th. That's right after the holidays. So far, we've got some interest from contractors already. We've heard that story before, but we will be beating that drum as loud as we can for board approval on January 11th. Contractor we have in there is March 14th, but as soon as the weather allows, we're going to get them in there as soon as we can. Our hope is to have students out there utilizing this nice new space for them before graduation. The sails, the poles that hold the sails up, all those things are items that the district's going to order directly to speed up their procurement process. We've already talked to the contractor, or the suppliers, they said they're going to have those all ready to go, so we can implement them all and hopefully have a nice space before graduation out there. We're targeting April 15th. Naturally, when you're planning work this time of year, weather can be a factor, but with the scope of work and the amount of time that we anticipate having, we're hopeful that we'll be able to make it work. Our estimated price is right around $140,000. As Wyatt said, we are factoring in a 10% volatility contingency on that. That seemed really aggressive just a month ago. Now I'm not so sure, but it is out to bid. We have seen some very recent prices that make us think it's sitting pretty good. And that's all I have, if there's any questions.
Same question. So we're going to use ESSER dollars for this. So then for Davis-Bacon wages, we'll be getting lists of subs and subs of subs and ensuring that everything gets paid out properly?
Yep, this is with the Davis-Bacon requirements. There's all sorts of paperwork that goes with it. There's surveys of the staff and employees and all that stuff, yep.
Perfect, thank you.
Where will the access to the
Huh.
classroom be?
Yeah, I still don't know my cursor. There's a new door coming in right here from the, there's a hallway corridor right there. And that will be actually, the district actually has a door project going on right now. That contractor was willing to order an additional door and get that installed for us under that contract so we could get it going. Good eye.
I'm sorry. And I might add that the seating will, it'll seat 28 to 30 students. So we'll have enough for at least, for every large classroom, and then also for students at lunchtime to have some, a space to go to for fresh air. So it has been an unusable space, and I think this way we can really start to incorporate some outdoor activities there at AL.
The rest of it's just paving and.
A little bit of drainage enhancement. This area does have a little bit of drainage issues, so I'm taking the opportunity to clean that up a little bit too. We've been fighting it at the top of the slope for a long time.
Great.
Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you. And then for our final presentation, Matt from BBH is, I'm going to take this road, this show, Dean. This is something that I've been thinking about, and every year, I've always said to myself that I was going to do something about the AL auditorium. And finally, we're in a position as a district where we can do this. So I really appreciate the work that Matt and his team have been doing with the district to bring forward a plan to address some of the needs that need to happen at AL. And so I'm pretty excited about this. I'm not on my timeline. It's going to be a little slower than I wanted, but sometimes you have to go slow to get everything done right so that it looks perfect. So Matt, the floor is yours.
Matt Wegener, BVH Architecture, and couldn't agree more. Sometimes you got to go slow to go fast, but I'm here to talk about the Abraham Lincoln High School Auditorium. We're really looking at two areas, Area A, Area B. Area A is the corridor that's directly connected to the auditorium. We're remodeling, refinishing, upgrading some finishes there just as a introduction into the auditorium space. And then, of course, Area B is the auditorium itself. So limited scope, put together some renderings of what the final product will look like. We are interested in creating some drama for the space. So introducing a wood slat wall as an accent, new signage that states auditorium, poster displays, as well as some new ceilings, linear lightings that would enhance the overall look of the space. We're not touching the terrazzo floor. It's in really good shape, as well as some of the base details. We are introducing some new doors that lead into the vestibule that's connected to the auditorium. So really that wood accent wall is the main focus. And moving across the hall, if you turn the other way, we wanted to address these display cases. Right now, they're full of stuff. There's a lot of almost like wrapping paper that's there behind it. Really no tackable surface. So there's a new tackable surface. We're painting the frames, but that's really the scope there. Putting in some new lighting inside the display cases as well. The brick is in really good shape. The tile looks really good. So just cosmetic upgrades for that corridor lobby space. And then once you move into the auditorium, we wanted to carry those same materials, those same concepts forward. Taking the lighter tan color that's there now, putting in a dark, almost charcoal gray. Introducing, replacing some light fixtures, but the new glass railing replaces the existing picket railing. For better visibility, we're still going to have a system that's made for high school students and is safe. So we've created details and working with vendors to do something that's sturdy and structural that will last a long time. And then looking towards the stage, we wanted to use that same wood slat system with a little bit different approach to highlight the proscenium. Part of that is introducing two different colors of wood stain. It's the same manufacturer, which comes as a system. Refinishing the wood flooring, putting new carpet in, new light fixtures. We want to also address there's some water damage that is showing on some of the clouds, the plaster clouds. So we want to do some selective patch repair and painting of those. Part of this project is to upgrade some of the theatrical equipment as well. So we've budgeted new stage curtains and rigging system, as well as a screen and projector, and some miscellaneous lighting upgrades as well. And then the sidewalls, part of our team was to include an acoustician to test the space for sound, not only for performances, but for everyday classroom use. And so we're introducing some acoustic panels, some diffusers on the sidewalls that allow for better projection of sound out into the auditorium space. And looking at the overall budget, we're looking at about $500,000 for the construction. That specialty equipment, that theatrical equipment that I just spoke of, the curtains, the rigging, part of it working with Heartland Scenic Studios, a local vendor. We were able to look at what you have now, and they recommended, just for safety, and a lot of it's original to the building, but for safety, recommended some upgrades there. And again, lighting, and then the screen and projector. We have a contingency built into the budget, as well as soft costs for fees, permitting, contractor general conditions and such, for a total project budget as it's displayed there. And as Dr. Morello hinted at, we're wrapping up drawings right now so we can go to bid upon approval. We will really want a contractor involved at the beginning of the year to start procuring materials, because we know the climate and getting materials. There's a long lead time on some of them. For example, the theatrical equipment is about 36 weeks. It will fit right inside the summer. And then a lot of what we're trying to do is have this green bar for contractor shop drawings, material procurement, but it also overlays the schedule of of the use of the auditorium. Working with Bridget Bellows, a lot of those were vents that could not move. So a contractor working in the space and then moving out so the school could use it really wasn't realistic. So we're really consolidating construction over the summer. And then substantial completion right before the fall semester in 2022. Any questions?
Questions from the board?
Same question. I mean, we're gonna,
We'll use operating funds for
oh,
this.
okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so this would be out of our.
When we renovated AL, what kind of work did we do in the auditorium, do you know?
I don't think we did much. And every year when I set for our senior honors night, I think it's the night that it always bothers me the most, when we're doing our seniors and we have our Hall of Fame evening. I sit on the stage and I look out and I see those bars across the railing, and I see just the tan walls, and I hear the sound, and Bridget has shown me the curtains and how they're old and falling apart. And when you see this, I mean, if Matt would have put what we have versus this, it's a major wow compared, without doing, I mean, many would think the price is a lot, but to think that we're upgrading so many areas and putting in, our seats are still, that's about what they did when they did the remodeling, is they put the seats in and some carpeting. And the seats are still in pretty good shape. So
They are,
that's a
yeah.
win for us. The main thing is the walls need to be painted, the water stains need to be taken care of, and really the sound system, the rigging. And then outside, when you walk into Abraham Lincoln High School and you go down, you know where the gymnasium and where the competition is. But once you get past that, you have no idea you're coming into the auditorium section. And this is going to kind of set that apart. And we have great departments that are doing some really spectacular work with our students. And the one thing that Matt forgot to mention was we're going to change the ceiling tile a little bit. If you see that metal ceiling, that will kind of set that space. I want that space to be set aside, as this is kind of our arts section. This is where our students perform. This is where assemblies are held, or our different student celebrations and our Hall of Fame. And it just really needs this upgrade to kind of bring it together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
And I think that concludes our public hearings.
Okay. And we do have time at our public hearings for public comment. We did not receive any requests from the public to speak, so I will go ahead and close our public hearing. Now I'll call to order our workshop business meeting of the Council Bluffs Community School District Board of Education. Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Tripp? Here. Mr. Peters?
Here.
Ms. Myers?
Here.
Ms. Shudak?
Here.
Mr. Kazire? Present. And Mr. LaFurla?
Present. Now, please, if you can, join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the pledge. Thank you. Before us now is approval of our agenda. Is there a motion?
Move approval of our agenda as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Our agenda has been approved. Next, we have approval of minutes from the work session, workshop business meeting, and organizational meetings of November 9th, 2021. Is there a motion?
I can move to approve the work session and workshop business meetings and organizational meeting of November 9th, 2021 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. and the minutes have been approved. That brings us to public participation. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board regarding agenda items or other matters of concern. We did have 2 individuals request time to speak to the board tonight, and you will each have 5 minutes. First, I will go ahead and call Marcy Long. Are you here? Okay, seeing no movement. Bob Hansen.
Hello, Bob Hansen, 1395 Ardmore Street. I'm here in a couple different roles. I've been a teacher at AL for 27 years. I also happen to be a longtime CBA member, and I'm current president right now. And I'm also here as a grandfather. My granddaughter started as a freshman at AL now, so I have a couple different roles here. I wanted to talk about the stresses and feelings of students and staff. I think that the district does understand that. Had a conversation with Mrs. Morello just earlier today that there are some thought processes in the works of getting some pause time. I don't know how else to describe it, but time for students and staff to take a breather. There might be some ways of getting early outs or even maybe rearranging the calendar, which we would hope to do. I think everyone, students and staff included, are feeling the pressure about just getting caught up from the past 2 years, getting back to where you're supposed to be. I also think people are feeling the pressure always to increase test scores, which is compounded by the fact that we're still trying to play catch up with learning. And then just the behaviors that are happening in the classrooms and in the schools. I think students don't quite remember how to behave in classrooms, and I think teachers are having trouble administrating that and trying to work with students on that. So I would just like to thank this district for thinking about us and also figuring out ways that we can have some pause time, even if it's just like having the students like leave early tomorrow and teachers stick around and get things done. I think that would be a great thing to help out the stress levels of everyone involved. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Appreciate your support and advocacy for our students and staff.
Thanks.
That concludes our public participation. Next, we move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo.
Thank you, Mr. LaFurla. At this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Diana Ostrowski. She is going to introduce our staff that we're recognizing tonight for the great work that they're doing.
You bet, and good evening. Good evening. I have the pleasure of introducing our, each month, our Employees of the Month. And this program is generously sponsored by our Council of Schools Foundation. Not only do they help us recognize staff who are outstanding, but also students who achieve great levels. And we'll look forward to more students joining us at future meetings. But tonight, we are celebrating finally our October Employees of the Month. And this month, we've kind of got something special. We have a twofer on our support staff members of the month, and that is our dynamic duo of the custodians at Carter Lake Elementary, Larry Sward and Joy Chambers. Would you mind joining us up here? Their principal, Mrs. Teresa Hamilton, is here to support them, as well as Raymond, who is our supervisor of the custodials. Thank you for being here, custodial staff, excuse me. Larry and Joy, I'm going to read a little bit about you. All right, Larry and Joy have gone above and beyond when it comes to taking care of our school, the nominator said. At the beginning of the year, teachers wanted to paint their rooms, so Larry and Joy made it happen. So many visitors and staff have commented on how amazing, warm, and homey the building feels and looks with the new paint. And the pictures of our student faces in the hallway walls are an amazing addition. Larry even figured out a way to put the pictures in the shape of a heart. Joy and Larry have so much pride in our school. They are advocates for including students in the work and the pride. They coordinate our weekly, get this, Golden Dustpan winner, which is presented to the classroom that leaves their room the cleanest. It works? Okay. Hey, hint for the other schools. Larry had shirts made for his team that said, "It's always a great day at the lake," sharing the pride he and his team have for their jobs and our school. Joy and Larry are approachable, welcoming, and truly have a team that is creating an environment in which students feel connected and engaged. The kids love seeing and interacting with both of them. We couldn't do it without them. Recently, Joy recognized a fourth grade class that started sweeping rocks without being asked. They had noticed how difficult it was for her to roll her carts out, the trash out, maneuvering through the rocks. Thank you, Joy and Larry, for all you do for us at Carter Lake. We hope you feel the hashtag Carter Lake love. Congratulations. Mrs. Hamilton, would you like to get in there? Oh, yeah. Raymond, would you like to be in the picture? Yeah, Raymond and come on, she's going to get a picture. Sure. Somebody can help you with your picture. You can just stand there. I think it's a team there. Yeah, take a picture. All right. Here we go. I'll get a picture. Okay. That's good. Yeah. All right. Ready, everybody? Kelsey's the main one. 1, 2, 3. One more. Yeah, I was slow on the draw. It was really zoomed in. I'm just getting your heads. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And I think this is past Larry's bedtime because he gets up at like 2 or 2:30 to get to work. So we'll be fine if you sneak on home. Okay. Our licensed staff member of the month is Caleb Scow. He is an English language arts teacher at Thomas Jefferson High School. Caleb, would you join Dr. Murillo up here at the front? Caleb is joined here tonight by 2 administrators at Thomas Jefferson, Ruben Cano, the principal, and we've also got Courtney Abbotts, the assistant principal, here to celebrate him. I'm going to read a little bit about what they shared. Caleb is a second-year teacher and has already stepped up as a leader in the building. He has taken on a leadership role to attend extra trainings on student success initiatives and is the Freshman Success Committee lead. Caleb builds authentic relationships with students, serves as an athletic coach, and is always positive and friendly as a staff member. He is kind and supportive as a colleague and has exemplified authenticity in his outreach and attending various trainings to help move our building toward high level of achievement. He's energetic, welcoming, and engaging, not only with students, but with all staff. His students are excited to arrive in his classroom, and he's always outside the door waiting for them with a smile. This nominator said, I've subbed for him before, and his students were the most well-behaved class I have subbed in for a long time. Get this, and it was a 9th grade English class, mostly of boys. That is really saying a lot, she said, about his excellent classroom management skills. Finally, he's very involved in our building, serving on committees and encouraging students to get involved in activities, which helps them be successful. It's wonderful to have him and his energy at Thomas Jefferson. Congratulations. Mr. Carno? I got you laughing, that was even better. Congratulations, well deserved.
Thank you. Next, we have some board reflection on the 2021 Iowa Association of School Boards Annual Convention. For the public to know, every year, the school district board of directors and some administration attend the IASB convention, and this year it was condensed a little bit compared to typical years, but always a good time for the board to learn about developing as stronger board members. So I'd like to ask all of you to reflect a little bit on some things that you enjoyed or takeaways from the convention. Put you on the spot.
Oh, yeah, sure. Getting there it was interesting. I didn't know what was going to happen exactly. I'm new. And then I realized that my first class was pretty much 90% new people too. So it was a little bit nice seeing that I wasn't the only one that didn't know exactly what to expect or what was going on. So fantastic class, a lot of information, and all of the other classes, just getting to know things, knowing more what the acronyms stand for, because they get thrown around quite often, and having just an introduction to what we need to know and what we need to do. It was a great experience.
Yeah, I think ISB does a really good job of tailoring sessions and workshops to new school board members, which are also beneficial to old school board members.
Yeah, I'd just kind of like to add on top of that. I really appreciated how warm and welcoming everyone was. Whether I was in the same class as Jared, the first one in the morning, and it was a lot of newer folks. And then in the afternoon, I was in the finance one, which was a pretty good mix of new members and returning members. But just like it was still a very warm and inviting place. A lot of these conventions sometimes aren't always as warm and inviting, and this one I just thought was fantastic. And I learned a ton, especially school district financing was very important.
Yeah.
And I can also echo what Pat and Jared said. Knowing that there were other new board members across the state, it was really nice to get to know them and why they decided to run and what they think about being on the board and what they don't know, what they do know. So that was really nice. But also the second day, we attended workshops that our own district presented on. And I thought it was really great to have reminders about what we are doing, new information I didn't know about what we were doing, but also hearing from other board members across the state that kind of validated how awesome our district is and the great work that we're doing. So that was really nice to hear, and that it's not just our community, but people across the state kind of echoing the awesome work that we're doing.
I'd just like to say congratulations, Dr. Merlo and team. Your presentations were fantastic. The district presented on career pathways and then the new tool that's going to be used for superintendent reviews and staff reviews throughout the years go forward. So fantastic job to you, your staff. Chris had a little impromptu join to the panel, so great job to the whole team.
Yeah. Dave, did you have
Sure.
anything to share?
It's always great, the opening sessions, they showcase the incredible arts programs that happen around the state. They were able to showcase the choral group from Johnston. And what really, I guess I wasn't amazed. I'm re-evaluating what amazed means to me anymore, but I was very thankful that the young man was able to stand up and announce how he wants to be addressed as a person. He announced which pronouns fit his description of who he is. And I felt that, any other time I might have been amazed at someone that young being able to come out and talk about who they are. But I'm not so amazed anymore because it's happening more and more. It should be commonplace that we are able to accept everybody and include everybody, no matter what their diverse backgrounds are. But for them to have a safe space to be who they are, and that was for me, what was even though we had excellent learning opportunities throughout, that to me showcased what Iowa school districts are at their best, is that they are a safe place where all students can learn and to take chances to fail and learn how to fail and recover from that failure. But it was a wonderful opportunity for the arts programs. They always have those, and they are truly astounding. They they are just so great. And I'm glad we're able to be a part of that.
What I wanted to share, Jill and Lauren kind of already touched on, but I think it's important for our community to know that we have a pretty incredible school district here. I'm reminded of that when I venture outside of this district and talk to other board members and education professionals across the state. Dr. Murillo was recognized for her leadership at UEN. Our school district presented on two topics demonstrating our sort of leadership and innovation in the school district and across the state. And in our community, I think sometimes we can be a little overly critical of our district. I think it's important to demand the best for our kids and our teachers and staff, but sometimes that turns into hypercriticism. And when you go outside of our community, Council Bluffs is recognized as a leader in this state. And I just want to make sure that our community understands that and maybe makes that same recognition. So.
Thank you, Mr. LaFleur. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for those kind words, and I am very proud of my team and the work they've done. They are, I'm only as strong as they are, and they are stronger than I ever thought I could be. So very proud of them. At this time, I'll move into our student achievement presentation, and Mr. Hamilton will be joining me this evening instead of Dr. Worthman. Mr. He's a little excited. He's getting the night off back there, Dr. Worthman is. Mr. Hamilton is going to walk us through. It was very important for us to look at our social and emotional learning surveys. And we set our goal, which, as you know, we have a goal that really centers around social and emotional learning. And I'm not going to steal Mr. Hamilton's thunder. I'm going to let him take you through the presentation. But I am proud. I talked with the Labor Management Task Force this evening. And one of the things I talked about was it's really important that we have a caring adult and that our students are starting to talk about it. And that speaks volumes for our teachers and our staffs in the building, that the students are really starting to feel like they have caring adults. And especially during the time, I had lunch with some leaders in the community today, and one leader was sharing about the stress that her child experienced during this pandemic, and really being able to have that connection to school and how important that is. And I was really amazed that she would feel comfortable to share it with me, but even more so that she knows that we have resources that we want to support her with and her child. And she feels really good about where her child is now in this, coming in the second year of the pandemic. So this is something that we're going to track, take at least twice a year. Really look for improvement. It's a survey, and Tim will walk, especially our new board members, through. Our Panorama is just a survey in our district. It's a company that we use just to survey. So, Mr. Hamilton, the floor is yours.
Well, you pretty well hit everything, so at this point, no. Like Dr. Murillo said, Panorama is the survey tool that we use within our district. We do take it twice a year. We have taken the survey the last few years, but we really feel like with the work that we've done, we're really setting this year up as our baseline year, because this is the first year that we're actually doing SEL curriculum as our universal tier, and I presented on that in October, so I'll talk a little bit about that later. So Panorama District Survey for this fall, we took it in late October into early November, so we recently got results back. It's actually two different surveys. We do it 3rd grade through 12th grade in the district. The 3rd grade survey has 40 questions on it, and the secondary or the elementary survey has 40 questions on it. The secondary survey has 46 questions on it. All of the questions are based upon a 5-point scale, 3 being neutral, 4s and 5s is really our favorable results. We use the survey to really support our district goal 4, which is to ensure each student is supported and connected. We have 3 data points that we use the survey for.
The first one is that 80% of the students report a positive self-perception of their social, emotional competencies. So looking at the survey, I just told you it's on a 5-point scale. We want all of our students to score themselves a 4 or higher. Again, this is them telling us how they feel about their social and emotional competencies, so they're rating themselves. We want 85% of our students to report that they like school. And then we want 100, and this is a brand new one for us this year, and we went over these before, but we want 100% of our students by 2024 to report that they have at least one caring adult in the building. You notice that doesn't say teacher, because the caring adult can be a custodian, it can be a para, it can be a nutrition worker, it can be an administrator. We have lots of adults that work within our school. We just want them to make sure that they have a connection with at least one adult in the building, somebody that they can go to whenever they have questions, whenever they need anything. So those are the goals and the data points that we use using the survey. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to just run you through exactly what the Panorama survey, the results are. Like I said, these are baseline data. You'll see some asterisks on these data. So when you look at the first one, emotional regulation, our elementary, the overall scored themselves a 3.3, and secondary also scored themselves a 3.3. That asterisk or star means that the 3.3 is actually the national average. We want our kids to score a 4.0, so we want them to score above the national average, but using the Panorama survey, that's the national average currently. And emotional regulation, we'll define it by they're able to control their emotional state. During stressful times, during sad times, they're able to stay in regulation. So grit is perseverance through setbacks, being able to keep moving forward. You can see there's no, I'm going to call it an asterisk, so I'm going to go with asterisks. There's no there, so we're just below the national average on there. Again, all of these we want by 2024, all of them to be 4.0 or higher. Growth mindset, potential to change your performance. So the ability to think that you can continue to learn and you can change how you're doing in school. Elementary actually scores above the national average at a 3.6, and secondary is currently scoring themselves at a 3.4. Self-efficacy, the belief in your own abilities. Elementary is a 3.4, secondary is 3.2. Self-management, being able to manage your thoughts and your behaviors. Elementary and secondary both scored 3.8. Social awareness, consider others and able to empathize with others. Elementary is at the national average at 3.8 and secondary is 3.5. The social perspective taking is really just measured at the secondary level, and that's considering others' perspectives, so being able to put yourselves in somebody else's shoes. We're at 3.3, and that is the national average. So using the Panorama survey, we really felt like we could add our own questions. So since we take it twice a year, this is where we added the questions this school year so we could track. Do you like school? 83% of our elementary students responded favorably that they liked school, and 74% of our secondary students. Having an adult who cares about you at school, 93% of our elementary students reported that they have an adult that cares about them, and 83% of our secondary students. The important piece about this is we know how each student answered every one of the questions. And in your board packet, I included all of the questions for elementary and the secondary survey. So as a school, we've shared that, as a district, we've shared that data with the school. So they're able to go in and look at every single student to really see how they did. Because we have our universal tier for our SEL curriculum. As I presented in October, Move This World is our elementary curriculum. They're doing it 3 to 5 times a week. It's 3 to 5 minutes. It's on the TV. You might remember the board members who are here when we watched it, the drink a glass of water. They're teaching kids to be able to stay regulated. They're giving them strategies to be able to work through stressful situations. Habitudes is our image-based secondary curriculum. It's done once every couple of weeks at the secondary level. So we're going to continue moving forward. We're going to continue to work on our universal tier for instruction. We just started that this year, so we really need to be able to analyze that, see how it's working for our students. But since we have the data that's sent out to each school, those students who may need some extra support, either they answered questions on the survey or scored lower than where we'd like them to be in the survey, we provide them support, but really looking at those 2 additional questions. If they're answering the questions that they don't like school, we really need to engage the students. We need to find something at the school that interests them, that makes them want to come to school. Whether it's a class or an after-school activity, whatever it is, we need to work with those students to really find something to engage them. For the students that said they didn't have a caring adult, we need to make a connection for them. And that's on us as a school district and as a school. And it's not going up and saying, hey, Tim, I noticed you answered this. I care about you. Because that's not going to work. It's really making those genuine or building those genuine relationships with kids so they know that they have an adult in their building who cares about them. But we have to be targeted just like we do in reading or math. We have to be targeted with those kids so they know that they have somebody in that building who cares about them, somebody that they can go to and build that relationship with. Later this week, early next week, I've been working with Diane, and we're working with the people from Panorama. We're going to send out some parent communication. I included what that looks like in the board packet, but I did want to show it up here, and hopefully this doesn't take too long to load. Perfect. And what I like about this, and this is one of my kids, so it's okay that I show it. I have my own permission to show it to you. So what I really like about when this gets sent home is it explains what each area means to parents. Because we fully expect that parents aren't really going to understand what it means. And it's really simple. And then if you look on the right side, it says try this for kids. And the one that I really liked was let's see, social awareness. When a teacher or peer does something well in a class, give them a compliment. Try to give at least one compliment each day. So this is a strategy that we're asking kids to do, right? And if a kid goes and does that every day, how much better will that classroom start to feel, right? So it's really teaching kids to be able to come in. You ask why this is important, because we know if we want to reach our goal of each kid graduating with a diploma plus a second credential, we have to look at the whole child. We have to support them not just academically, but we have to support their social and emotional needs. And now, like Dr. Murillo said, now in a pandemic more than ever, we have kids who have a lot of social and emotional needs. So the Panorama survey is really, they're able to tell us what needs they have, and we're able to give them the resources with people in the building, whether it's counselors, therapists, graduation coaches, whoever it is in the building, we're able to hopefully meet those needs to move forward. So with that, I will answer any of your questions.
I had a brief question. I was wondering if you could maybe get into detail as far as the selections of students who took the survey. Was the survey distributed to everyone, and it was just whoever participated? That's
correct. We asked that every student take it. The actual percentage of students at elementary, because I take the enrollment, so every student. So we have kids who are enrolled in other programs or who are alternative assessments who may not be able to take it. So a little more than 90% of our elementary students, 3rd grade through 5th grade, took it, and a little higher than 80% of our secondary students take it. So I want every student to take it. It's just secondary, especially high school, with people at Iowa Western and different programs, we don't get as high as we do at elementary.
Mr. Hammerlin, real quick, and looking in the results of the survey, it looks like, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, was there new questions that were added this year that weren't asked previously?
Yes, those are the background questions. We put them in about, do you like school and do you have a caring adult? We had asked them in other surveys before, so we put them in this survey so they were all in one area.
Okay, I guess I'm seeing quite a few that says a 0.0 from last survey. So does that mean that we scored the exact same way?
Oh, yes, that's the different change. That's what it had been essentially flatlined, and that's why I said we're using this year or this fall as our benchmark.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah, that was the percent change, sorry.
And this identifies each kid, it's not anonymous, so we can actually see the individual test results and address that specific student?
Correct. It's anonymous. I will say this, it's anonymous. Panorama, we send them student numbers. So they send us back. Obviously we know the student numbers. So we know who the kids are who take it.
I have a question. So once the student number is identified, does it go to like the building principal or a certain staff, like a team, to help like meet their needs?
Building principals can determine at their building who gets it. Generally, I'm trying to think through all the buildings, but generally it's the counselors and the building principal.
Thank you.
And are we able to do, sort of to disaggregate have all students' scores in a building or in a classroom, and just like we would do with the map or something like that?
Exactly. You
Okay.
can break it down. Classroom, individual student, classroom, school.
Okay.
Because we do it assigned by a homeroom teacher.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. At this time, we'll move into our informational presentations, and at this time, I'm going to turn the mic over to Mr. Wilson to introduce his guests that we have this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo. I'd like to introduce Justin Hope, who is a partner at Syme Johnson, our independent outside auditors. Justin has been our partner in charge of this audit last year, and this year, his job is to essentially review in detail what his team has done out there. And then also at the firm, there is another partner who does a cold read of the audit report to make sure that it makes sense, that numbers aren't awry. And so Justin is here to present the audit, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you to Dean and his team as they get all of the information gathered and prepared. It's a monumental undertaking to build a set of financial statements that's required under the government standards. So please interrupt at any time. This is the world I live in and the language I speak. So if it's not making sense or you want to clarify things, please just jump right in on that. So there are two deliverables that come out of an audit. You get a report to the Board of Education and also an audit report, which is the actual financial statements and the footnotes and those things. They are drafts at this stage due to some late guidance from the federal government on some of the COVID funding that's been given around, primarily the ESSER program. And so that information came late. So Dean and I are working on wrapping that process up right now. Nothing expected to change from the drafts you've seen as we wrap that up. So we have some required communications as auditors, things that we're required to communicate to those charged with governance, which is you folks, the standards that we use when we complete our audit, and what our responsibility is as an auditor. And so we're planning and performing to obtain reasonable assurance. We're making risk assessments. We're taking samples. We're using analytical procedures and things where obviously we're not looking at every single transaction that comes through. And the result then is our independent auditor's report. There's an unmodified opinion, which is the best result, or consider a clean audit, if you will. Some other significant matters, we take a look at the accounting practices that the team uses. There was a new accounting standard this year, GASB 84, which is primarily related to presentation of fiduciary fund activity. We look at any significant or unusual transactions that we identify, and any alternative treatments where there's maybe different ways to record things. No concerns in either of those areas. Another area of our focus is where management's judgments and estimates. These are where management has the ability to influence the results of the financial statements. Those judgments and estimates being depreciation, accrued expenses, investment valuation, self-funded health insurance that the district has, and then also the pension and the OPEB liabilities. We also do take a look for audit adjustments. There were 7, 2 of which were provided by Dean and his team. As I looked at the other 5 this afternoon getting ready, they are pretty consistent in the types of entries that we're making from year to year, primarily related to the pension and the OPEB. That's a highly technical piece of accounting to get right. And so no major concerns from my seat or if I was sitting on this board. I'm not concerned about what those types of entries are. We look also, no disagreements with management. We were able to get the information we needed, talk to the folks we needed to talk to. No issues prior to retention or concerns in that regard. Also, as part of this communication to the board, you get a letter about internal control, whether there are any reportable matters under government auditing standards. We have none of those. And then we do include some suggestions for continuous improvement or upcoming accounting standards. There's a lease standard and a subscription-based IT solution standard coming up, and we'll be working with Dean and his team to make sure those get implemented appropriately in the years to come. Shifting gears into the audited financial statements, early in that report, pages 2 and 3 is our auditor's report. And again, that opinion that the financial statements are presented fairly, an unmodified opinion. Then there's some other language required just due to the supplementary information and different things that are included in the financials. This slide is just kind of laying out all the different pieces of information that are included in the financial statements. You get a management's discussion and analysis, which is kind of a summary of everything that comes behind it. The fund financial statements, the different levels of detail that you can see, and then some pointed out a handful of some of the more important notes as you go through those things. Following all the financials and the notes, you get your required supplementary information, budget schedules, pension schedules, OPEBs, things like this, and then supplementary information, combining fund statements and more detail that backs up some of what's farther forward in the report. We also get to do a compliance audit under the uniform guidance, and this is a result of all the federal funding that the district receives. This year, total federal awards were about $17.2 million. And so we take a look at guidance published by the federal government. What are we supposed to be looking at in relation to these programs? We have a selection process to take a look at which programs are we going to test and focus on. This year we had 2 what they call a major program. So these were the 2 programs we focused on. The Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds, or ESSER, and then Title II-A, the Teacher Quality Program, are the 2 that we focused in on. And again, that ESSER guidance was late coming out for the 2nd year in a row, so we are wrapping that process up likely by the January board meeting. That'll be all finalized. And those 2 programs covered about 37% of the total federal awards. Related to the ESSER, that total award of the different tranches of ESSER was about $28.3 million through the various awards. And about 21.5 of that is still available or unspent at the June 30 year end that we're looking at here. A slide on the IPERS liability. And so the thing to point out about IPERS liability is you'll have this big pension liability on your financial statements, and that is not a check that the district has to write. It is a projection of overtime costs that the district will carry for participation in IPERS. And so the things I think that I find important to look at is the 3rd bullet point here, the IPERS funding status, watching that over time. If the funding status starts to dip, likely your contribution rates are going to have to go up to make up for that. And again, you can see this here, the historical funding rate in the last bullet point, just short of 7% about 10 years ago, and it's almost 9.5% here in this last fiscal year. So altogether, about $6.7 million of contributions over each of the last 2 fiscal years to the pension plan. The last handful of slides, just kind of some trending over the years that we've been working with the district here. Governmental fund revenue. Governmental funds are the funds that do all of the operating of the district, the general fund being the biggest one of those. The growth here in the revenue is primarily ESSER, about $7 million of ESSER money in 2021 that drove most of that change. And expenditures, again, they track fairly close to revenues. $6 million of growth, $7 million is ESSER. So that's the answer to a lot of the changes over the next couple of slides here too. Bonded debt decreased about $5 million, no new bond issues during fiscal 2021. This one here is not sure why that didn't show up. I have the numbers on my slide. Unassigned general fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. And so what this is really a reserve, if you will. And I have that number. It's about 12.5%, up from about 9% the last year. And so what this is, funds carrying over to be able to help in fiscal 2022. General fund revenue, again, this is your operating fund. This is where teachers get paid out of this fund, grants come in and out of this fund, really the running of the district. Growth here, again, primarily that $7 million of ESSER is the biggest piece of that. And again, you see the expenses tracking with it. And revenues of 130 million, expense of 124. So again, some growth in that reserve for fiscal 2022. General fund balance, again, carry forward number up about 5 million from the previous year. Here you can see we talked a few slides back about the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. You've been humming along about $10 million every year, and the growth here, this is all ESSER, and we would expect this through 2024, when the last of those funds can be spent. That number will probably continue to grow over the next few years as we see that come through. Just some trending on the levy rate here, 16.99 for 2021, and some valuation trends. Again, good growth in the valuation, which is key to being able to levy the funds necessary to operate the district. An enrollment statistic here, a decrease from 2020 to 2021. We did talk about this at the Finance Committee when we met a little bit. We think some of it is likely due to the pandemic, either transferring, homeschooling, different things. And Dean, do you want to correct me on what we thought we saw for 2022's enrollment when that came?
So the enrollment count we did in October, which will be used for the funding for the 22-23 year, is also down about 200 students.
So, and we work with several other districts on the other side of the river, and we've seen this too in their enrollments too. So not a Council Bluffs only kind of a thing. So with that, happy to have any questions or comments or discussion about any of that.
Any questions from the board?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Dean. Thanks.
And our final presentation this evening is one I've been looking forward to and pretty excited about. I'm going to introduce Dr. Matthews, who is going to start the presentation this evening on our Early Learning Center. And this is a project that we have been very, very excited about, and I look forward to our school community and our community at large learning more about the Early Learning Center. So Dr. Matthews, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo, and thank you to all of you at the school board for this opportunity to provide exciting updates about our Early Learning Center. I will give a little background before I turn it over to Roger for those of you who are not familiar with this project. The Early Learning Center will really help assist us in achieving Dr. Murillo's vision of universal preschool. So this is going to take us really close to meeting the needs of all 4-year-olds in our community, so they are really kindergarten ready when they leave us. We are very fortunate to have been selected to partner with the Iowa Department of Education in this exploratory project. It is labeled a BELIEF project by the state, which stands for Blended Early Learning and Educational Foundations. And with that, we will have the expertise of some consultants in the early childhood field who will really help us to implement this, because we know birth to 3 is novel for us as a school district, and we really want to make sure that we are utilizing those expertise, the expertise of those consultants at Juniper Gardens out of Kansas University to support us through that process. With that being said, this is going to be in addition to the 32 classrooms that we are already operating throughout 10 of our elementary schools in the district. So this will add 14 more classrooms to help serve early childhood in our community. And I am going to turn it over to Roger, who will go over some of the plans, as well as the timeline and the budget. Roger Slassen of BVH Architecture. Thanks, Roger.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Roger Slauson. I'm a project manager with BVH Architecture. We've been working on this project with the district since 2017 in one aspect or another. It was great to see it come to life and head towards fruition here. So I'm just going to introduce you to the building real quick, or kind of give you some updates on where we're at. This is the a site plan. It's really just in diagram form right here. But this is the old Tinley Elementary site. So you've got north is up, Avenue G is to the north, and 8th Street is over to the right. The gray area is the building, so it does occupy the bulk of the site. It was a nice tight fit there, but we were able to make it work. So you see on the right, we've got about 44 parking stalls for parents and visitors. And then to the left of the building, or the west side, where you see those 3 circular areas, that's actually the outdoor play and activity area. So that'll be fenced in. We'll have 3 separate play zones. They'll be partitioned off from each other, so smaller groups can stay together. We're still working on the actual development of the equipment and things that are going to go out there with the district. But the idea is outdoor play and learning spaces. There'll be trike paths, landscaping, a shade structure, and then playground equipment. And then across the street to the south, there's another parking lot south of 8th Street that's about 36 or 38 cars, and that's mainly staff parking. So next is the floor plan, kind of the same orientation here. You'll enter from the east center. You come in the front door, the green area kind of moving up. The green area is the administrative offices, reception area, health, staff break room, things like that. You will enter through a secure vestibule. So during the daytime, you won't be able to walk into the building without being buzzed in and going through the office or the reception area, and then being let back out into the rest of the building, very similar to most of your other schools these days. Just kind of moving up, I'll just kind of walk around, but moving up to the top, the light blue classrooms over at the upper right are the 0 to 1 and 1 to 2 age groups. Moving on down that north wing, there's 6 classrooms in that area, and all those except for the 0 to 1 room, all those rooms are going to be built the same, and we're calling them flex rooms. So they'll really be adaptable rooms that'll fit everything from a 1-year-old to a 4-year-old, just depending on how enrollment ebbs and flows over the years. So then when you move into the other blue classrooms, so there's 7 on the north side there. The rest of those will be 3 to 4-year-old age rooms, and you'll see some diagrams of these as we move forward. Coming back down the corridor on the room with the big circle on it there on the west, that would be a large motor skills room. So it's going to be a large room with a tall ceiling, and it's almost like indoor play area or motor skills. So when the weather's bad or the kids can't get outside, they have a play area indoors. Moving on down, I'm going to just move out here if you don't mind. It's easier to point. I'll talk louder. Coming down this way, this is a smaller motor skills room, maybe for the smaller kids to help develop their motor skills in. A multi-purpose room here. So that'll be a wide open space. It could be staff development, professional development, meetings, just whatever, it's truly multi-purpose. If they have visiting people that come in for any events or something, that would be a place they could set up. Adjacent to that is a kitchen where the meal prep takes place. I guess backing up one step, that multi-purpose room will also serve as the hardened space for a storm shelter for the students. And then moving down this classroom wing down here, that's just more 3 and 4-year-old rooms, like the ones on the north side. So these are just some diagrams of what a typical 0 to 1 and a 1 to 2 and flex classroom would look like. You see we have the crib area in the 0 to 1 room. Each pair of rooms has a core area between it that has a storage room, restrooms, and in the case of the 0 to 1 and 1 to 2, in the flex rooms, I guess, there's like a teacher work area with a diaper changing area within the room. And that's all set up so the teachers never turn their backs on the students when they're doing some of these other activities. Similar, these are the older kid classrooms, the 3-4 classrooms. Really, the only difference is instead of having that teacher work area with diaper changing in it, the teacher work area comes out into the classroom and they gain more storage space in between the rooms. But other than that, same restrooms between the rooms. And all the furniture we're showing there is just kind of representative of what may be in place. It's usually these age groups, it's a lot of flexible, soft furniture. So here's an image of the exterior of the building, and I know that these images are set up in the back there as well, so you can take a look at them later. But this is looking to the northwest, so this would be at the corner of 8th and Avenue F. You're seeing on the right-hand side, the front door area. Around the corner to the left, or on the south side, is teacher entrance and classrooms. This is an image of the outdoor play area, and I would call it the courtyard area. So you're starting to see some idea of activities there on a sunshade, as well as the room at the far back with all the glass is the large motor skills room. That room will have a large overhead garage door that can open up so the kids can actually go in and out on a nice day if it's appropriate. So the schedule. We are done with design development. We're shooting towards 100% design development at the right before Christmas. We're sending it out for another cost estimate. We've had one done in the past. This is just our second checkpoint. We'll get that back right after the first of the year. We'll have about a week or so to look that over and reconcile any discrepancies that we see or kind of make it right. The items in blue is something we just wanted to point out. We are in anticipation of the length of construction times that we're experiencing right now. We are going to bid out we're calling it an early grading package. So I think most of you know this site had the Tinley building on it previously. It has a house that is on there now. That's coming down. The site is also sits in the floodplain, and we encountered some bad soils when we did soils testing there. So in a nutshell, we have to take out 3 feet of dirt that's there and put back in 5 feet of dirt, plus or minus, to get the site elevated to meet the new flood regulations in the city and to get good soil in there. And we want to get that out and done early so that when we get a contractor on board in April or May, the site's ready for them to go. And that'll probably take a couple months potentially off of their schedule to try to meet the end schedule. So we will be back here for a public hearing and board approval to bid the building package at the first meeting in February. We will wrap up our construction documents shortly after that, get it out to bid at the end of February, take bids on March 24th. We'll have a period of reviewing those, picking a contractor, getting contracts drafted in preparation for a board approval of bids on April 12th. I think this is the last slide, but just kind of a budgetary summary for the construction. This is the budget that Dr. Murillo has been sharing as she's going around the community, fundraising and all those things. We've worked really hard on this budget for the project. Daryl's been great to work with, helping us out on costs and kind of being our second set of eyes on everything we're doing. But if you take a look at that, we have a building construction costs of about $250 a square feet. We have site construction costs that are nearly $2.75 million. Like I say, we did encounter some costs there that we didn't anticipate years ago when we were working on this, but better to know it up front so we can budget properly. We do have 4% escalation, trying to cover cost escalation from the time that we got our first estimate a few months ago till next spring. And we are also carrying a contingency of 10%, and I think I missed movable equipment and furnishings for the district, and soft costs for things like commissioning, surveys, soils, testing, permits, design team fees, et cetera. Then I get down to we do have a contingency in there. We are carrying a number for the acquisition of the house and the site work. We are just right at or slightly below that number, Daryl told me today, so we're good there. So the total building and site cost is about $18.2 million projected. The district has some campaign costs in there, as well as some operational endowment costs, so a total project cost of just over $20 million. And I will turn it back to Tracy.
Thank you, Roger. Now I get the opportunity to walk you through the programming, so I will talk to you a little bit more about the classrooms and how they will be staffed, the ratios, as well as our curriculum and assessment plan. So we will have a total of 14 classrooms, as Roger showed you on the site plans. Because this is a pilot, the 3 classrooms that were in that north corner are going to be designated, one as an infant classroom, one as a younger toddler classroom, and then one as an older toddler classroom, so we can make sure we are serving students from infancy all the way through to completing their 4-year-old year of preschool. That will still allow us 11 classrooms for preschool. Those classrooms will be able to serve 3- and 4-year-olds, again, to make sure we're transitioning students all the way through, that we don't have a gap between that 2-year-old and 3-year-old year, but the primary focus will be on those 4-year-olds to achieve that goal of universal preschool. So in the first classroom, that infant classroom, we will have a lead teacher, and that person will have a minimum of an associate's degree in early childhood education or a related field, and the teacher assistant in that room will have a minimum of a child development associate certificate, and that is the same requirement that we have of our teacher assistants in our preschool classrooms right now. The difference is that this CDA certificate will be specific to infant toddler programs, where ours are specific to preschool. So we are really going to be utilizing the expertise of our consultants to work through that. And I've already been collaborating with Child Care Resource and Referral here in our community to work on some training opportunities for working with us and collaborating with us as we launch these pilot classrooms. This classroom will have up to 8 children. We are required to maintain a 1-to-4 ratio. The younger the students, the more adult support they need. Obviously, they are less independent. And this room will serve children 6 weeks up to approximately 1 year in age. As they're approaching that 1 year and hitting those developmental milestones, we would look at a transition plan into the next classroom, which would be our younger toddler classroom. Again, the lead teacher will have a minimum of an associate's degree. The teacher assistant will have that same CDA credential for the infant toddler program. Our ratio here is 1:6, so we will serve up to 12 children in this room. And again, approximately 1 to 2 years in age, and then transitioning from there to the older toddler classroom. Same requirements of our staff in this classroom and the same ratio. So it will just be that next age level of students. And a lot of that transition is based not only on age, but again, hitting those developmental milestones that show they're progressing and ready for that next step. So that brings us to our preschool classrooms. Those 11 classrooms will be staffed just like our 32 classrooms are right now in the 10 elementary schools. So we will have a lead teacher with a minimum of a bachelor's degree. They will have their Iowa teaching license that will certify them to teach preschool. And then again, a teacher assistant with a minimum of a CDA. An associate's degree is also acceptable for that teacher assistant position. And we do have both staff members with CDAs and with associate's degrees in those positions right now. The ratios for these will be similar to our general education classrooms right now. So up to 16 children, that 1:8 ratio with those 3 and 4-year-olds. So that brings us to curriculum and assessment, and our plan is to deliver that same high-quality preschool experience and early childhood experience in all of our classrooms at the Early Learning Center from birth through 4, and that is using our high-scope curriculum. And you can see from some of these quotes I pulled from the curriculum that really active learning is at the core of the framework, and there has been a lot of thoughtful intention to the design of the Early Learning Center, both indoor and outdoor. A lot of conversations around how to really make sure that this space is designed to facilitate that active learning and exploration of the world around the children so that they can really navigate the environment and learn through active learning and play. With that, the second component there is really the curriculum that's specific to infant and toddlers. So it's the same framework, but it's geared toward younger children. And the heart of that is all about building those supportive, trusting relationships. We know that children thrive when they're in that safe environment, that nurturing environment. So again, really giving careful consideration to the design of the building so that families are engaged, they feel welcome, and that we're really wrapping around this support for these young learners to establish those trusting relationships where students can, again, explore the world around them and learn through that exploration and active play. The assessment that we will use again from birth all the way through the 4-year-old year is My Teaching Strategies Gold. And those of you who have been on the board are familiar with the report. I will probably provide again in March, where we use this assessment tool for our current 3 and 4-year-olds. Again, it is a progression of skills, so it actually goes from birth all the way through 3rd grade. And I'm going to share some examples of what that looks like and how those skills progress from infants to older children. But what's really nice about Gold as an assessment tool is that it is authentic, it's observation-based. So it is all about observing and assessing children in their natural learning environment. And a lot of times that's in those play scenarios as we're looking at our younger students. So it's not a high pressure assessment or anything like that. It's just really looking at where children are developmentally and looking at the progression of how to get them to that next step. And this encompasses all areas of child development. So it looks at social emotional development, math, language, literacy, even grit and perseverance and problem solving. So it's really about the whole child. And there are 38 different objectives that we have these progressions on. So it's very comprehensive. This is just one example of those progressions so that you can kind of see what this looks like, because that infancy part is new to all of us. So this is objective 1, regulates own emotions and behaviors. And then specifically, this is about managing feelings. And what you see there underneath those colors, those are color bands associated with ages of students. So the red is 0 to 1-year-olds, and the orange is 1 to 2-year-olds, and yellow is 2 to 3, and so on. And there is some overlap there because we know that children don't just have one skill and then another skill. They're going to progress and overlap for a while. So at the end of a 1-year-old and beginning of 2-year-old year, they're going to have that overlap there. So that just shows you kind of the setup. But with this specific example, what you can see is that an infant, to regulate their own emotions and behaviors, would use adult support to calm themselves. So that would be something like if a baby is crying, an adult goes and pats them or rocks them and soothes them. That is how they are showing that they're using adult support to regulate their emotions. When you progress into, those older toddlers and even the younger preschoolers there, you're starting to see that students are self-soothing. They're comforting themselves, so they're seeking out maybe a preferred item, a teddy bear, a blankie when they're sad, or they might seek out a preferred person. They would go find an adult who could comfort them. So they're starting to take some initiative for their own self-regulation. And then finally, where we would want to see students when they're ending preschool with us is that they're able to look at a situation and delay gratification. So a common example in our preschools would be, I really wanted to go to the Black Center today, but there's too many kids there, it's really full. So I'm going to choose a different center, and maybe I'll go there later when there's not as many children there. So that would be a real-life example of how a teacher would recognize that a student is delaying their gratification in order to regulate their emotions. Another example, again, the progressions are the same as far as the age groups, but this is a language example. So listening to and understanding increasingly complex language. This one is specifically related to following directions. You're probably wondering, well, how does an infant follow directions? So thinking about that, it's really just about responding to those simple verbal requests, and those are paired with gestures and voice tones. So thinking about a baby, they would wave bye-bye, and we're imitating that for them, or that when they're playing peekaboo, like, oh, where'd Lucy go? And really making sure that they're responding to those. Those are very, at the most basic level, the directions that they would be following. But as we progress, we're going to start following those multi-step directions. So please put your coat away, wash your hands, and choose your breakfast, and being able to follow that sequence of directions when they're 4. So that just gives you an idea of how we are going to make sure that we are serving the needs of all children of all age levels and progressing their skills throughout in some of these different areas. So with that, I will take any questions you may have, and I might lean on Roger, depending on what they are.
What questions do you have?
I'll jump right in. Of the 28 teachers that will be in the teachers and the support staff for the teachers, what additional supports in the building as far as the principal, custodial staff, what number do we anticipate in additional supports for those teachers and associates that will be working in the building?
Great question. So we would have a coordinator or somebody who oversees the building, a health associate, 2 custodial staff. We would have nutrition services workers. We would also have our curriculum specialist and early childhood consultant officing there. There would be a family advocate. Through the AEA, we would have speech language pathologists, OT, PT, kind of coming in and out to serve those students as needed. And then in addition to those that are designated full-time in each staff, we did talk about having an additional 6 part-time teacher assistants because we recognize they would need to give breaks, and the people in the staff couldn't work in that classroom the full day, especially to meet the before and after care for the infants and toddlers. We would open those rooms a little bit earlier while the older kids are in Kids & Co.
Mm-hmm. So just about as many supporting the teachers and the associates in the building as well. So
yes, pretty much it would run like an elementary school.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I have just a brief question related to nutrition. When we're talking, 0 to 1 year old, especially, I wonder if you can maybe go into some detail as far as how those guidelines would be dictated to parents, because I know, some kids at that age are going to be still breastfed, some are still, formula. I wonder if you can get into that a little bit.
Yes, so on the site plans, I don't know if Roger mentioned it, there is a kitchenette in between that infant and one-year-old classroom specifically for that purpose, so that there's safe handling of breast milk or formula, whichever is needed for those infants. And we would follow the same guidelines outlined by DHS for the safe food protocols as far as that goes. And there are also mothers' rooms incorporated in here for breastfeeding mothers who would need that option on site.
Yeah, that was my next question. You answered it before I asked it.
Oh, perfect.
I don't know if you have it already just planned out, but what is transportation going to look like to and from the school with obviously the exception of parents, but is there something the district will be providing?
So for general education, early childhood, we will not be providing transportation. For students who require transportation for IEP services, we would provide transportation for that. Otherwise, it would be reliant on parents.
Dr. Matthews, can you talk about, I know that we talked about this last year, I believe, the how it's determined which child, would be accepted into the new center versus, we all saw in the pandemic, there's a large need for early child care. So
Yes.
it's great that we're adding additional classrooms, but what would be that parameter for selecting those children to be accepted?
Great question. So with the limited seats for our younger children especially, we would use our same screening process, and within that, there's a total eligibility score, and it's based on overall development, income, other risk factors. So we would just prioritize serving the students with the greatest need first based on those. And then for our preschool students, we would run our same screening process, and as part of that, parents get the option to select their preference of schools with the understanding that they don't always get their first choice depending on space availability. But we would prioritize, again, based on students with the highest needs getting into the programs in their neighborhoods or where they need them first. Sure.
It's very exciting.
It is very exciting. And thank you to our Council of Schools Foundation and Dr. Murillo for spearheading the fundraising for this. We're very thankful.
It's been fun.
Good.
And Mr. LaFurla, that concludes our presentations.
Thank you. Brings us to our resolution portion of the meeting. We have several. First is a first reading of Policy 625, High School Graduation Requirements. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the first reading of Policy 625, High School Graduation Requirements as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? Maybe just for the,
Yeah, I was going to say.
looks like, oh,
Yeah. Nope.
go ahead,
For it
Dr.
first.
Borthman.
Yeah, we can have Dr. Borthman's like, and I
You
want him
didn't
to
get the
come
night
up
off.
Because you've done he's done such a good job here. I want him to.
Sure. So the high school graduation requirements, what we're suggesting is a slight change in the mathematics course sequence. It's just the addition of an additional class that would allow students to meet their graduation requirements. It's specifically focused on students who may want to go down an information technology track. The class is called Explorations in Data, and it is really geared toward data science.
Thank you.
Yeah, before Dr. Borthman leaves, could I have him talk a
Sure.
little bit about?
Yeah, what you have in front of you is the 2022-2023 program of study. This outlines, the first part of the book outlines the academic handbook, which are some of the operating procedures that we use in our high schools around course selection, grading, those types of things. The center of the book provides information about career pathways. There's a crosswalk between all of our courses, as well as all of the degree, certificate, and diploma programs at Iowa Western Community College with 4-year plans for each to help students and families identify maybe what post-secondary plans may look like based on what their interests and or career aspirations are. Then it also outlines what the +1 pathways that we offer in each of our high schools. And then the last part of the book is the course catalog, which outlines all the courses that are available for students at both AL and TJ.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. Dr. Worthman has done a lot of work around this, especially incorporating our Diploma Plus pathways. So really excited about our program of studies.
It's a great resource for students and parents, and I just hope that all of those parents of high school students are getting on the website and accessing this document and checking it out. It can be a little overwhelming just because it's so comprehensive, but speak to your high school guidance counselor about it because it's a really great tool for our students and parents. Any other discussion? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
So for our new board members, I opened up online voting there, but I'll still call out the vote. Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Ms. Shudek?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes. First reading of the policy has been approved. Next, we have approval of Chapter 12 exemption request. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to approve Chapter 12 exemption request.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
And maybe just an explanation on this one for the public. We've been doing this every year for the past several years.
I'll let Dr. Worthman come back and join us. He needs a little exercise tonight.
I believe this may be the 12th or 13th year we've applied for a Chapter 12 exemption request. What it does is it allows us to offer physical education every day for a semester rather than every other day for a year, basically, so that students have an opportunity to fill their schedule with other elective requirements.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions on this? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Ms. Shudek?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes, the motion carries. Next, we have appointment of legal counsel. Is there a motion?
I move that the board appoint Eilers and Cooney PC as our outside legal counsel for a 3-year period from 2022 to 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Out of curiosity, is this the same firm we've been using for a long time, or is it bid out every 3 years, or what's the process that we go through to hire them?
This is the same firm we've been using for the last few years, and it is a firm that most districts use because they have a strong component around education, special education. We also work with other legal firms, but this kind of contract just allows us kind of a 3-year continuum. It doesn't lock us into only using them, but it is a great resource for our school district, and they work, and sometimes they are able to handle things where we share the cost with other districts instead of just having our own law firm.
Any other questions? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Ms. Shudek?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes, the motion carries. Next, we have appointment to the Pottawatomie County Assessors Conference Board. Is there a motion?
I'll move to appoint myself back to the Pottawatomie County Assessors Conference Board as presented.
Thank you, Jill.
No problem.
Second.
I enjoyed it, so it was good to get to know that tax side of the things, and it's not a problem at all to serve again unless somebody else wants to take it.
I appreciate your willingness to serve. We have a motion and a second to appoint Jill. Any other discussion? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Ms. Shudek?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes, the motion carries. Thank you, Jill. Finally, we have appointment of the 2021-2022 negotiation team. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to appoint the negotiation team for the continuing of, to be resolved that the board authorizes Gary Melbourne and Emily Warren to serve as the district's negotiation team for the upcoming CWA contract negotiations.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? This year, we are only negotiating on CWA. questions?
And, no, I was going to add to
Oh,
that.
go ahead.
And to the MOU that was already signed, it'll just be on wages, so there won't be any other types of negotiations there.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Ms. Shudek?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes, the motion carries. Finally, we have approval of our consent agenda, which includes acknowledgement of a donation from the Knights of Columbus, approval of Halo V2 smart sensors, approval of special education contracts for students that are placed outside of Council Bluffs, several school districts, personnel actions, and accounts payable. Is there a motion?
I move that the board gratefully acknowledges and accepts the donation from Knights of Columbus.
Approval of the consent agenda?
Yeah, oh, yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
How have the Halo V2 smart sensors worked out for us, Vicki? Dr. Morell, apologies.
They've done really well. We did the pilot program at Wilson. And the one real benefit, besides being able to detect the vaping that would be occurring in a restroom, as you see, any kind of sound or anything that doesn't seem quite right, it also triggers. So like if there was somebody vandalizing something in the restroom, it also provides us with camera outside of the restroom. So once we've been alerted, we know who's leaving the restroom, so there's not having to have a body there present when they walk out of the restroom. And we're looking to move 6 of these 12, 6 at each high school and 3 now at each middle school. So this will really give us a good test. But I know John Stiles served on this committee with Tim Hamilton and with our principals, and Mike Naughton piloted the program and really felt like it was very beneficial, especially when we went through that mess of the TikTok and tearing up restrooms. This will really help us have something that alarms us or alerts us, and that text comes right there to either a laptop or a phone of an administrator when something's happening, or that it detects vaping going on in a restroom. So it's been very, very well.
Good. Any other questions? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Ms. Shudek?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes. And consent agenda has been approved, and that concludes our business. We're adjourned.